Canada has announced plans to mobilize nearly $500 billion Canadian dollars for minerals, energy, and digital infrastructure. But here's the twist. One of the partners expected to benefit from this massive shift isn't the United States. It's Sweden. From rare earths to Arctic shipping, from batteries to data, this alliance signals a new chapter, and Washington can't stop it. Welcome to Geo Capitalist, where we decode global wealth, one power shift at a time. Today, we're uncovering Canada's new deal with Sweden, a partnership that stretches from Europe's largest rare earth deposit to Canada's massive infrastructure plan. If you want more fact-driven geopolitics, hit subscribe and let's dive in. In 2023 and 2024, most headlines around Canada-Sweden ties focused on defense, particularly Sweden's Gripen fighter jets being considered for Canada's air fleet. But as we enter 2025, the partnership has broadened. Ottawa and Stockholm are moving beyond defense procurement into industrial collaboration that spans minerals, shipping, energy, and digital infrastructure. Why the shift? Because the currency of power has changed. In the 20th century, influence was measured in aircraft carriers and air bases. In the 21st century, it's measured in supply chains, industrial resilience, and technological edge. Canada and Sweden have understood this pivot earlier than many of their allies. For Canada, the Gripen discussions were just the entry point. Under Prime Minister Mark Carney, procurement decisions are no longer just about capability, they're about economic diplomacy. Every port upgrade, every energy corridor, every mineral contract is framed as a way to deepen alliances and secure leverage. For Sweden, NATO membership was about more than Article 5 protection. It was about embedding itself in a wider industrial ecosystem. By aligning with Canada, Sweden taps into resources, processing capacity, and infrastructure that allow its green tech and mining industries to scale. This is particularly important as the EU pushes to cut its dependence on China for critical minerals and Russia for energy. What began as a fighter jet story is now part of a larger narrative, a partnership that is green, industrial, Arctic, and digital all at once. And that's where the story moves from tactical procurement to strategic alignment. In 2023, Sweden announced that it had discovered the largest known rare earth deposit in the European Union, located in Kiruna. These materials, neodymium, praseodymium, dysprosium, might sound obscure, but they are the lifeblood of modern technology: wind turbine magnets, electric vehicle motors, smartphones, satellites, and defense systems. Europe consumes enormous amounts of these resources, yet has long relied on China for more than 90% of its supply. Sweden's discovery was heralded as a breakthrough, but there's a catch. Mining is only one piece of the puzzle. Without refining, processing, and transport corridors, the minerals remain rocks in the ground. This is where Canada fits in. Canada is scaling up its critical mineral strategy, building refining facilities in Quebec and Ontario, expanding recycling hubs, and pouring billions into midstream processing. By pairing Swedish mining capacity with Canadian processing, the two countries can create a democratic mineral corridor that cuts out choke points. The impact is profound. For Sweden, the Kiruna deposit goes from a promising headline to a monetizable industrial base. For Canada, it means hosting the high-value stages of the supply chain, capturing more revenue, and embedding its economy in Europe's green transition. For the EU, it's security. Instead of wondering whether Beijing will restrict exports, Europe can source minerals from trusted allies. For NATO, it's resilience, ensuring critical technologies aren't dependent on non-allied suppliers. This isn't just geology, it's strategy written into the bedrock of northern Sweden, and Canada is becoming the essential partner to unlock it. Canada's national strategy to mobilize nearly CAD $500 billion in infrastructure is not about one country, but Sweden is among the partners positioned to benefit. This capital will finance processing facilities, digital backbones, and upgraded ports. Sweden's mineral discoveries gain immediate value when linked to Canadian refining and export networks. Imagine Kiruna's rare earths refined in Quebec, shipped through Halifax, and delivered to European battery makers. That's not hypothetical. It's the framework Ottawa is building. For Canada, the plan does three things. First, it creates jobs and high-value industries at home. The government estimates tens of thousands of positions across construction, refining, and digital sectors. Second, it strengthens bargaining power in global supply chains, shifting Canada from a price taker in commodities to a co-architect of industrial corridors. And third, it allows Ottawa to pivot away from a one-sided dependence on U.S. markets. For Sweden, it amplifies its green transition industries. Companies like Northvolt, which builds EV batteries, and Hybrid, which pioneers green steel, gain reliable access to minerals and energy inputs. These aren't abstract names. Northvolt has contracts with Volkswagen, BMW, and Volvo, while Hybrid aims to cut millions of tons of emissions from steelmaking. A secure supply from Canada makes those targets realistic. Beyond Europe, this $500 billion mobilization also positions Canada as a logistical hub for NATO. Port expansions in Halifax and Churchill, in northern Manitoba, aren't just for cargo, they're designed for dual use, commercial trade, and allied logistics. The digital backbone, meanwhile, ensures that undersea cables and data flows are secured within allied frameworks, not vulnerable to interference. $500 billion isn't just an investment line, it's leverage. It signals to allies like Sweden that Canada isn't just a resource reservoir. It's a builder of corridors. And in a fractured global economy, those who build corridors set the rules. The Arctic is no longer a frozen, inaccessible frontier. Melting sea ice is unlocking passages that could shorten shipping routes between Asia and Europe by thousands of kilometers. For Canada and Sweden, both with northern expertise, this is an opportunity and a responsibility. Canada controls vast stretches of Arctic waters and coastal routes, but infrastructure has long lagged behind. Sweden, while not an Arctic coastal state, has deep experience with Arctic technology, from advanced ship design to green shipping fuels. Together, they're turning the Arctic into a corridor of connectivity. Canada's Polar Max Icebreaker program, currently underway with Finnish and domestic shipyards, is central to this plan. These icebreakers will patrol Arctic routes, escort cargo, and enforce sovereignty. Sweden's expertise in ice-class vessels and its partnership with shipping giant Maersk bring sustainable propulsion systems and logistical know-how. For NATO, this matters. Arctic routes bypass vulnerable choke points like the Suez Canal or Panama Canal, reducing exposure to global trade disruptions. By ensuring that these lanes remain accessible and secure, Canada and Sweden strengthen the alliance's northern flank. For Canada, it's sovereignty and opportunity. New shipping revenues, stronger control over Arctic territory, and a way to monetize its geography. For Sweden, it's both a new export sector and a strategic project that enhances its role in northern security. The Arctic has always been symbolic of untapped potential. Now, with Canada and Sweden working together, it's becoming a strategic frontier of influence, trade, and resilience. Sweden leads in green innovation. Northvolt is scaling battery production across Europe, with plants in Sweden, Germany, and Poland. Its ambition? To supply more than 25% of Europe's EV battery demand by 2030. Hybrid, meanwhile, is pioneering fossil-free steel using hydrogen instead of coal. If successful, it could eliminate 7% of Sweden's total emissions and reshape global steelmaking. Recycling giants like Stena Recycling are also creating closed-loop systems for rare earths and metals. Canada, meanwhile, brings the inputs. Nickel from Sudbury, cobalt from Northern Ontario, hydroelectricity from Quebec, and pilot hydrogen projects in Alberta and Newfoundland. Ottawa is also offering billions in incentives under its critical minerals strategy and clean hydrogen investment tax credit. By joining forces, Canada and Sweden create a feedback loop. Sweden supplies cutting-edge technology, Canada provides critical inputs, and both anchor themselves at the center of Europe's clean tech revolution. For Canada, this is about embedding its resources in the most valuable supply chains of the future. Instead of selling raw cobalt on the open market, Canada ties it directly to Northvolt's gigafactories. Instead of exporting nickel without guarantees, Ottawa locks in long-term demand from European green steel producers. For Sweden, the payoff is scaling innovation with reliable supply. Without guaranteed access to critical minerals, Northvolt and Hybrid risk bottlenecks. With Canada in the picture, those risks shrink. And there's a geopolitical layer. By forming this green tech alliance, Canada and Sweden reduce Europe's dependence on Chinese battery supply chains and Russian steel inputs. It's more than climate policy, it's industrial sovereignty. This alliance strengthens Europe's autonomy. It diversifies Canada's markets. And together, it proves that green technology isn't just about emissions. It's about power, influence, and economic survival in the 21st century. Minerals and ships capture attention, but the digital layer is equally vital. Sweden is home to Ericsson, one of the world's leaders in 5G and upcoming 6G networks. Canada, meanwhile, has emerged as a global hub for artificial intelligence, with clusters in Toronto, Montreal, and Edmonton ranked among the best outside the US and China. Together, these strengths create a partnership where infrastructure meets intelligence. Ericsson builds the secure networks, Canada's AI optimizes performance, and both ensure that sensitive data flows remain under democratic control. In an age of cyber vulnerabilities, that's as important as pipelines or ports. The synergy extends beyond telecom. Sweden's focus on digital sustainability, energy-efficient data centers, and blockchain-enabled recycling systems aligns with Canada's innovation in quantum computing and machine learning. Pairing these ecosystems creates an Atlantic digital corridor that could rival the dominance of US big tech or Chinese state firms. For NATO, the implications are clear. Cybersecurity and data integrity are now frontline concerns. By building their own trusted digital backbone, Canada and Sweden enhance not only their economies, but also the alliance's resilience. For Canada, the benefit is leverage. AI is no longer just research. It's commercial and geopolitical currency. For Sweden, the partnership transforms its telecom infrastructure into a force multiplier, giving it a stake in the data flows that underpin global economies. This is the invisible infrastructure of the 21st century, not roads or ships, but the networks and algorithms that define competitiveness. And Canada and Sweden are positioning themselves at its core. Both Canada and Sweden are NATO members, but their value isn't measured only in defense budgets, it's in industrial capacity. NATO needs resilient supply chains for minerals, energy, and data. Canada and Sweden provide precisely that. By aligning critical minerals, Arctic shipping, green tech, and digital infrastructure, they are building NATO's industrial pillar. This reduces reliance on Washington, spreads capacity across allies, and embeds smaller powers in leadership roles. In many ways, NATO's resilience now depends less on tanks and more on whether supply chains can withstand geopolitical shocks. Canada's mineral reserves, from nickel to cobalt to uranium, are indispensable for both civilian and dual-use technologies. Sweden's rare earth discoveries in Kiruna complement that, while its leadership in green steel and batteries ensures NATO's industries can decarbonize without sacrificing competitiveness. Together, they give NATO something it has lacked: a secure, democratic base of strategic materials. For Sweden, this elevates its status from NATO newcomer to indispensable partner. Instead of being a junior ally, Stockholm becomes a hub of industrial innovation. For Canada, it proves that its relevance extends beyond North America. Its Arctic position, digital backbone, and mineral corridors make it a bridge nation, connecting NATO across the Atlantic in both physical and industrial terms. This partnership shows that NATO's future isn't just decided in Washington or Brussels. It's also being written in Quebec's refineries, Sweden's Arctic mines, and joint shipping lanes that harden the alliance's foundations against global volatility. Step back, and the Canada-Sweden deal looks less like a one-off and more like a prototype. Two mid-sized powers leveraging complementary strengths, minerals and tech, Arctic and infrastructure, to punch above their weight. This model is repeatable. Canada can replicate it with Finland, where icebreaker construction and Arctic defense already overlap. With Denmark, where Arctic logistics and Greenland's rare earths create synergy. With France, whose aerospace sector needs secure, critical mineral flows. Sweden, meanwhile, can scale this model across the EU, embedding its mineral wealth and innovation ecosystem into a pan-European supply chain backed by Canadian corridors. The result is a network of resilient, democratic supply chains, less dependent on superpowers. That means less exposure to Chinese mineral dominance, fewer vulnerabilities to Russian energy leverage, and more autonomy in industrial strategy. It's a quiet revolution. Mid-sized democracies proving they can shape the global order without waiting for Washington or Beijing. For Canada, it's a leap from raw exporter to strategic partner, from being a supplier to being a system builder. For Sweden, it's the transformation of geological fortune into geopolitical clout, giving Stockholm influence far beyond its size. For the U.S., it's a reminder. Its allies are not breaking away, but they are building options. And in geopolitics, options equal independence. This is why Canada's new deal with Sweden matters. It's not just about trade or technology, it's about showing the world how alliances of the future will look: green, digital, industrial, and resilient. And that's why this deal changes everything. If you found this breakdown valuable, watch our next video. It connects directly to what's unfolding right now. And don't forget to subscribe. This was Geo Capitalist, where we decode global wealth one power shift at a time. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.